filled out Schedule A/B, or you've at least come to a good stopping point on that schedule, and you're ready to move on to the next, and that is Schedule C. Luckily for us, Schedule C is the first schedule that we've looked at that's not 8, 9 plus pages long, typically only about 2 to 3 pages of material to fill out. The tricky thing with Schedule C is it's a little more complex and nuanced in terms of how you could potentially fill it out. So let's take a look. Schedule C is the property you claim as exempt. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in Ashley's account, which you'll see we've completed Schedule A/B, and we're now on Schedule C. And I'm going to go down to generate another new form for her and open it with our system viewer. Okay. And so here we are. Schedule C, the property you claim is exempt. Essentially what this is if you're filing a Chapter 7, what property is it that the bankruptcy trustee is not entitled to take from you? This can mean a lot of different things depending on what state you reside in and what rules or exemption statutes you're utilizing. And we'll talk about that more in a bit, but this is going to be really your responsibility in terms of how you fill this out. I'm just going to show you how Ashley did it because she has a really simple case and a simple exemption list that she used in Alabama. So let's get started and we'll talk about the issues that you might run into with Schedule C. First, her name. Put in Ashley Adams. And same thing with Schedule A and B. We're filling out this the exact same way. So this should be nothing new. Let's move on to the details. Okay, so part 1, identify the property you claim is exempt. And the first question it asks is which set of exemptions are you claiming? Check one only, even if your spouse is filing with you. Different states have different requirements in terms of whether they'll allow you to use the federal bankruptcy exemptions or the state exemptions. Now, Ashley filed in Alabama, so that means she could not. Alabama has rules that state she's not actually entitled to use the federal exemptions. She has to use the state exemptions. So for that reason, on this first question, she's claiming state and federal non-bankruptcy exemptions. She's not entitled to use the federal exemptions that the bankruptcy code provides. And so that's why she filled that out. Now, depending on what state you file in and what state you live in, you may be entitled to utilize different exemptions. This is really a really big area where it's maybe a great idea to go consult with a bankruptcy attorney or get someone's help to fill out this form, because there's a lot of things that you might legally be entitled to that you might be missing out on here if you just fill this in quickly without really getting into the details. Fortunately for Ashley, she's got a really, really simple set of financials, and so there's not a whole lot of give and take on this form. She doesn't, like we said before, she doesn't own a house. She's not going to be claiming any sort of exemption with regards to her home. And so that makes things a lot simpler. Again, if you do own a home, this is one of the reasons why it's probably a good idea to consult with a bankruptcy attorney. There are exemptions that you may be entitled to use in filling out this form. And so let's get back to Ashley's situation. You'll recall she doesn't own a home. She does own a car that's worth under $9,000, and she owns some personal items essentially. And so that's the extent of what she could claim as exempt. That's her property. And so let's get into what she actually claimed as exempt in response to question 2. And you'll note that in question 2, fill in the information below. That is a brief description of the property you're claiming as exempt. What property are you saying the trustee is not entitled to take from you and sell to pay off your creditors? List a brief description. List the value of what it is you own. You'll recall in Schedule A/B, actually listed values for any property that she owned. So that would essentially, it says copy that value, put it in this box, and the amount of the exemption you claim. Certain statutes would allow you to claim certain amounts in terms of value. So, for example, if you have a home, maybe the statute you're using will allow you to claim a certain portion of the value of your home, but not all. And so that's why you would list a value here. And then you have to list the specific laws that allow the exemption. And so in Ashley's case, she had to go find an Alabama statute that allowed her to claim this property as exempt from the bankruptcy trustee. So let's look at how she filled out this form. First, she listed her household goods as the first thing that she claimed as exempt. And it asks for the line from Schedule A and B that you reference this item in. And so in her case, it was 6.1 where she referenced household goods. The value of the portion she owned, if you'll recall, in Schedule A and B, the value of her household goods that she listed was $1,500. Now, she actually has to fill out a section of the Alabama statutes that entitle her to take this exemption. So in your case, you would need to find whatever code section it is that allows you to take an exemption. There's different websites that outline the code sections you might fall under. In her case, she lists Alabama Code section 610 6 and 610 126. And under those code sections, she states that she's entitled to exempt all of that property from the bankruptcy trustee. And so she lists $1,500 here. Okay, let's move on to the next item of property, which for her, she listed was clothing. Her clothing, which she valued at $500 and was listed on 11.1 of that schedule, she takes the same exact code sections which allow her to exempt that property and which also allow her to exempt all of it. And so that's how she does the exemptions with regards to everything. I won't, get into too much depth besides that. Suffice it to say that she's got a simple financial scenario where she owns relatively few things, and that makes this part pretty simple. And so the third item, for example, was her jewelry, which you'll recall she listed at being worth $1,200. She uses the same code section and states that she's entitled to claim the entire amount as exempt. You may recall 12.1 is where she listed her jewelry. Now, she actually had more than 3 items of property, and so she included another section where she added an amount for her checking account, which was listed at $3 value. She claimed she was entitled to the whole $3, and she used the same exact code sections. I believe I put 125, and it's actually 610 126, so I apologize for that. So these are the 2 code sections she used for 4 different items of property, and those are the things she claimed as exempt. In other words, things she doesn't have to give up to the bankruptcy trustee. Okay, question 3. Are you claiming a household exemption of more than $170,000, $350? She selected no, presumably because she doesn't own a home. She would not be entitled to a homestead exemption, not owning a home. One thing, this is kind of, nitty gritty, but with some of these forms, you'll note that it includes a little box to put in your page number. So you can put in your page number here. This is page 1 of, well, we're going to say page 1 of 2, and this will have a total of 2 pages. Okay, so moving on, these are the items. Moving on, these are the additional items that you might list that you own. And so I made a little bit of a mistake there because I assumed there was no more room to list exempt property, but there was more room. So let's list her final bit of property, her checking account at Wood Forest. Her checking account. $3. She says she's entitled to claim all of it under those sections. $3 is not a lot of money, but she is entitled to claim it as an exemption under those code sections, and so she does so. And that's it for this section. I hope you can kind of get a taste for the fact that in Ashley's situation, she doesn't have a lot to fill out here. She actually only needs to utilize 2 code sections for the entire schedule, and she doesn't have any property to claim as exempt. You'll also take note that Ashley doesn't list her car as exempt. That's because presumably she couldn't find a statute or a code section that allowed her to take an exemption for her vehicle. That's why she didn't list it here. She did find code sections that allowed her to take exemptions for these things. And so it's really going to be up to you as the person filing bankruptcy to either figure out what code sections you can take an exemption on, or get an attorney or have someone help you with this part. If you've got a really simple set of financials like Ashley does, this probably is not going to be that difficult to fill out. But this is it. We are done. Ashley has finished filling it out. And so I'm going to do what I usually do. Go ahead and save this. I like to save it to the desktop. We'll save it as Schedule C. And I can go ahead and close this. Like we always do, I will come back to our web form and choose that file, Schedule C, save it, and you'll see it's ready to open again if I need to change anything. Now I'm done, and so I'll click Completed, and we'll see if we open this up. Ashley's finished these 2, and we're done. So that's Schedule C. We'll see you back for the next one.